Hey everybody, it's Robin Robbins here, founder of MSP Success Magazine. I've got an exclusive interview with Fred Voccola here, CEO of Kaseya. He's coming right off of Connect in Vegas. There were thousands of attendees there, MSPs, middle market IT service companies. Phenomenal event. I was there, saw the announcement of Kaseya 365. I always want to say K365. It's Kaseya 365. And it was pretty amazing. I was there, with a media pass. I was in the back, and the applause was amazing. So, Fred, I appreciate you coming on and answering some of the questions. We sort of have this tagged to be very clickbaity. Fred addresses the critics, the doubters, the haters. So, obviously your announcement was like sort of the shock heard around the industry. A lot of people talking about it online. So we wanted to get with you and say, hey, what do you have to say with some of those things? So Fred, thanks. First of all, thanks for being here.
Oh, and Robin, thanks for having me. And it was good to see you at the event, and it's good to be here now.
Yeah. So I mean, tell it, because like I know when I hold my events, you're generating sales. You announced Kaseya 365. How did it go? Just give us sort of like what was the uptake from your perspective?
Yeah, it was our biggest event we've ever done. I think the number was upwards of 6,000 people there. So it was the biggest one that we've done. It's always uncomfortable speaking in front of 6,000 people. I'm not a big fan of big groups like that, but it was fun. The uptake on Kaseya 365 has been just unbelievable. So to date, and please don't quote me on the exact number, but as we're about 10 days or 12 days, 12 business days past Kaseya 365's release as of today, and we have about 1,600 MSPs that have bought Kaseya 365.
Wow.
To give it a perspective, that's a week and a half. It is, we're pleased with it. One of our objectives were aggressive, but this is blowing away the expectations that we've even expected. And, we're hoping that we'll have upwards of 10, 15,000 MSPs on Kaseya 365 by the end of the year. So it's been really well received. We're very lucky and humbled and blessed that we've had that type of reception.
Yeah, I mean, it was like the applause that I heard was phenomenal. We'll talk about some of that. But let me kind of take you back, because before I kind of lay into you with some of these comments that people have said, I remember talking to you back in 2015 when you had just taken over the CEO role of Kaseya, and you had sort of had a vision back then. And I'm just curious, like when I talked to you back then, you seemed very clear on the problem you were going to solve and who you're going to solve it for. Did that vision change? Like, tell me about like where you were then and what happened last a couple of weeks with the announcement of this. Like, why did you do this? Has the vision changed at all?
About 10 years ago, I was lucky enough to and I said this on stage, I was lucky enough to come into the industry and take over Kaseya. And the vision, or why I did it, or why we did it, I should say, because it's definitely more than just me. Why we did this and what we see is we're in the middle of a really unique, interesting time. Every single one of the people listening to this are MSPs or related to MSPs. And what all MSPs are doing, what we're all doing, is providing small to mid-sized businesses with their technology needs in a simple way. And the global economy is changing. And it started 12, 14 years ago, and now we're in the middle of it. And that is, small to mid-sized businesses are now the most important part of the global economy. We have statistics that say upwards of 70% of new job growth, over 50% of economic activity are small to mid-sized businesses. And it's continuing to expand. And what's driving that is small to mid-sized businesses are digitally transforming. So technology is becoming the business applications and the data and the technologies that dentists and gyms and architecture firms and law firms and construction companies that they all use is the most important asset they have. Now, most, if not all, of these companies don't have large internal IT groups. So they're using MSPs to do it. And here's something that we see and that we have seen and that we're trying to solve for. The average MSP, average. Now, Robin, some are much better and unfortunately some are much worse. But the average MSP does somewhere in the range of 10 to 12% profit margin. Now, here's something that's crazy. The average accounting firm that services that same market has profit margins in the 30% range. Plumbers, the average plumbing company, has a higher profit margin than 10%. Plastic surgeons have profit margins higher than 10%. And listen, plastic surgeons and plumbers and accountants, they're all great. They do great things. But what an MSP does for small to mid-sized businesses and for our society, which relies on SMBs, quite frankly, is so much more. Especially with the proliferation of the cyber gangs and cybercrime. I mean, these cyber criminals are targeting small to mid-sized businesses. Over 90% of all commercially driven cyber attacks are targeting small to mid-sized businesses because they believe that they're easier targets. And they may be right. You know, the FBI, for example, has limited resources, right? The FBI can't go and pursue every $50 or $70 or $100,000 ransom attack. If they did, there'd be millions of FBI agents. So the small to mid-sized businesses are the target. And the MSPs that are supporting them are at the front line of not only making sure the largest part of our economy, the largest hiring engines in the global economy, their systems are available. They're also there to make sure the systems are secure. And they're being paid less money than the accountants who do the books of the same company.
Right.
Making less profit. So we looked at that and said that there's something's off. So when we started to look at, the depth of really what makes the MSP industry, we saw an opportunity to change the unit economics of the entire MSP industry. And we looked at it from things that we can control. And when we saw what MSPs are doing, there was no one platform for an MSP to use. MSPs were using technologies, for the most part, that were built for enterprise companies. But either way, they were using lots and lots and lots of different technologies, paying a disproportionate amount of their revenue for these, very good products that are unintegrated. They don't work together. They don't provide automation. And, we looked at that and said, if we can build a platform, we can construct a platform that has everything the MSP needs in one place. And we can make it very integrated so that we can have it provide substantial automation. And we can do that. We should be able to charge about 1/2 of what's there in the market. So we can do a couple things. We can solve that problem of the MSP being arguably the most valuable business service company, business service provider in the SMB space, and make them have the profit margins that they should, because what they do is a lot harder than what an accounting firm does.
Yeah.
No disrespect to an accounting firm. It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder than what a plumbing company does. No disrespect to the plumber, but it just is. And with K365, we've done it. We've done two things. One of them is, so K365, the price for it's roughly $4 per endpoint. And what MSPs are paying now for that functionality is around $14 to $16 per endpoint. So an average MSP is making $100 of revenue per endpoint, just whether they charge per user or per endpoint. In this example, let's say they're charging $100 per month per endpoint from their customers. If they're running a 10% margin, they're making $10 per month per endpoint of profit. Mm-hmm. Say at 365, now they're making 20.
Yeah, without having to cut labor costs, without having to raise prices, without having to
or make a single sales call.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No,
this, the other part about this, Robin, that we saw was, when MSPs in the industry, the profit margins are so low that MSPs often have to make tough choices. They have to make a tough choice because not all of the MSP's customers, the architects, the law firms, et cetera, sometimes those folks are pretty frugal and they're not always willing to pay for the advanced cybersecurity that the MSP is recommending for them so they can be protected. So let's say the architecture firm decides not to accept the advanced cybersecurity protection. The MSP has to make a choice. Do they not take on that client? Or do they take on that client, know that client's somewhat naked to some of these cyber threats? And then if and when that architecture firm gets hit, it's the MSP's fault and the MSP suffers. So we think we're knocking down both of those problems and challenges by fundamentally changing the unit economics. And it's been 10 years and $12 billion of investment. And it came to fruition, or the beginning of it came to fruition with the announcement that we did last week in Vegas with Kaseya 365.
yeah. And my data actually is a little different than yours. I'm seeing the average MSP getting a net profit margin of about 8%. 18% puts you in best in class. So the best of the best in class are getting about 18% net. And I think even the ones that are getting 8%, they're counting their salary as part of that EBITDA. They're not even, so
And they're still making, even the best in class are making less profit than the accounting firm or the advertising agency that's serving the same customer. It's just not right. I mean, the MSPs work, it's so hard. I mean,
that is hard.
I'm an engineer. What they do, it's like the most underappreciated thing. It's so hard. And the end customer doesn't always understand how damn hard it is what the MSP does. And we want to make sure that they're making the money that they should make, to be quite frank.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into some of the comments that we saw on social media commenting about, this announcement. So one of the concerns that was raised is, how are you able to offer this so cheap? And somebody, said, hey, they're probably just going to get you in cheap, lock you up for 3 years. And then after you've integrated the whole security suite or the tool set, we're going to raise the prices on you exponentially. So can you talk about why you can offer this so cheap?
Yeah. And I will. And before I say it's never easy to hear things like this. Yeah. It's frustrating because
Stay off Reddit then. That's a sewer.
Right? It's like, this is my company. I love it. I work really, really hard to try to do the right things. And so I'm going to do my best not to be a little emotional. So to your question, first part's a great question. How are we able to do it? Couple of ways. First, we made so we own all of the kit. We made lots of acquisitions and lots of development work. So every single component, every product that Kaseya has is our own kit that allows us to integrate them very deeply. And that integration allows us to build automations with our AI engine. But from a financial standpoint, how are we able to offer, such a aggressive or positive pricing model? It's very simple. We have some of the best engineers on this planet. And one of the things that Kaseya doesn't, companies don't always talk about is the hardcore engineering they have. I'm a software engineer. I'm a nerd. I love it. I always say MSPs get into being MSPs because they like to fix things. Software geeks like me like to get into software because we like to build things. And every software product, every SaaS product, they consume resources. They consume compute resources, network resources, storage resources, et cetera. There's a phrase in the industry: how expensive is your software, or how efficiently does it run? If you're doing security scanning functions, there's a lot of IOs, a lot of processing, et cetera. How do you make these things more efficient? And our engineering group, for the last decade, we've known this is where we want to go. We've had a laser focus on making, among many things, our technologies more efficient. make the cost of running our software, our cost, our data centers, all those things so low that we can continue to make our margins and our profit by offering prices like this. So this is absolutely not a loss leader. It is not a bait them and switch them, get them in and jack the price up kind of thing. And we'll talk about, I can talk about that as well with some of our price lock guarantees that we're doing, but 100%, the reason we are able to do this is it's been just a great engineering effort by Ranjan Singh and Alexei and Gray and their teams have done just phenomenal work over the last 10 years. We have KPIs that we track about how efficient, what are our COGS, how efficient is the software running, that we're able to do this. And I would argue that our margins, our software margins for Kaseya 365 are probably better than our competitors' margins at their much higher prices.
Right.
And it's very similar to what Microsoft did with M360 or Office, Microsoft Office back in the day. Same thing.
Right. Integrated it, lowered the price.
Yep.
100%. Okay. Okay, great. So there's another concern that was brought up that some people are worried about having all their eggs in one basket. Like, okay, if we go full in on this, and with the hack that happened a couple of years ago, they're concerned. So what would you say to those people?
Yeah, I think let's first look at all in one basket, and then we can talk about the hack and then how the two relate. One of the things at Kaseya, what we're trying to do, religiously trying to do, is to develop a platform that makes MSPs powered by Kaseya the best in the world. We have size doesn't always matter in terms of the success or the viability of a company. Just because a company's big doesn't make it good. But there are things that being large help with. For example, we have, I feel comfortable saying we probably have more resources in R&D than all of our competitors combined. So that means the ability for us to continuously innovate and innovate at scale is second to none. Very similar to Microsoft. Microsoft's approach, which is brilliant. And some people may love or may not like Microsoft, but I don't think anyone can argue what Microsoft has done over the last 30 plus years is develop more functionality and make it available at lower and lower costs. Think about a world without Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to look at that model. We're not trying to copy and be a Microsoft. That would be very arrogant of us to even dream of that, but we're trying to provide more and better functionality that's integrated at lower and lower costs. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, if we can do that, it makes MSP's businesses better. So the all eggs in one basket, I think that the benefits of having one unified platform for an MSP that costs 1/2 as much and gives you twice as much automation, it's worth it. Mm-hmm. The issue from security perspective about having all your eggs in one basket. Listen, we live in a world where I think I've heard this phrase after 9/11 when I was talking about terrorism. And now we hear it a lot in cyber terrorism, especially commercially driven cyber terrorism. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when and what happens. We had a cyber event a couple of years ago. And we got hit, just like one of our competitors, ConnectWise, experienced things recently, and Microsoft experienced things recently, and
SolarWinds, yeah,
SolarWinds, and Oracle and Salesforce. I mean, you name it, people have been hit. No one's immune to it, and I think, for example, Jason at ConnectWise did a very good job in how he addressed it, and I think Microsoft has done good jobs, and I think what the lessons learned are, how do you make sure when you get hit that it doesn't create a big event? You have lots of white space between things, and that you're protected. So you take maybe a little punch to the shoulder. You don't get 5 Mike Tyson right hooks to the face. And we take a lot of pride in that. I think when you talk to our event, 57 of our partners out of our, at the time, I think we had maybe 35,000 partners were impacted by it. To be super clear, 57, one is too many. It should never happen. It's never acceptable, ever acceptable. But 57 unfortunately suffered, not 37 or 35,000. You know, it's how are the best practices so you can compartmentalize risk, create white space, and be protected. And I think that companies like Kaseya, like Microsoft, like Salesforce, I think that there's a lot of best practices that we all adhere to make sure that those types of events, when they happen, and they will happen, they're kept to be contained and rapidly responded to, as we did and others have done. But the benefits that come from a unified platform at a fraction of the cost, I think it's challenging for an MSP not to do it if they want to compete.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I always hear about the threat landscape and how, when an MSP is monitoring devices, the more endpoints, the more devices, the more connection points, the greater the risk. So, I'm not an MSP and I don't even plan to stay at a Holiday Inn last night or anything, but it seems to me like, having 18 pieces of software, trying to integrate them in another way, another argument you could make is that exposes you more because you have 18 times, like one of them gets hacked. I mean, there's probably, you probably could answer this better than me. I'm just saying that would seem to me like it doesn't make sense to make that argument.
I think that risk is everywhere. So if I have 18 different pieces of kit from 18 different people, the ability for any one provider to isolate themselves from others it can be challenging simply because they don't control all the kit. So they can't guarantee that the white space is present and that the interoperability of data and single sign-on things is protected. So, there's arguments on both sides of which is more secure or less secure. I'm in the camp of, I believe, by having, when you own a company like Kaseya or a company like Microsoft that owns all of their kit in their platform, if an MSP is all in on IT Complete, there aren't really any surprises in terms of our security posture in the threat landscape. We can model them all in, factor them all in, and do our best to prevent them all and do our best to do breach testing. So in the event something happens, we can run a fire drill for, I hate to use the word all, but for many, if not all possible scenarios, because we control all of it. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at running those kinds of fire drills or breach drills in a situation where you don't control all of it, you really can't do it. So Robin, I think there's a lot of validity to your point that a unified solution is probably on the more secure side than the lower secure side.
Okay. Well, let's talk about price. I think it was $399 that you said the price was going to be for Kaseya 365. Some people are saying, well, it's more like $5, or is it a little bit more than that? So what is the real price?
The real price of Kaseya 365, what we announced at the show, is $3.99 for Kaseya 365 Pro. And that was a promotional price that goes for several weeks after the show. After that, the price is $5.25. So we have a promotional price for people to jump and license Kaseya 365 in the several weeks following the show.
Okay. So they have to talk to their account rep, I guess. You would just say, I guess it would depend on if they have certain modules and not others or.
Well, no, it's just the timing. It's really just the timing of it. It's a promotional offering. So yeah, and Robin, you're 100% right. Talk to your account rep, understand exactly what the upgrade process looks like. If you're not a Kaseya customer in any way, and you're interested, you can go to the website and you can sign up for a trial, a demo, and run through those processes. But that's the price point. It's $399, and in about 2 weeks, the price goes to $525, which is the official list price. $399 is the promotional price.
Got it. Okay. So let's talk about the price lock guarantee. Some people said, oh, this is a hoax. This price, there's some small print in there. So talk about the price lock guarantee that you talked about on stage.
First, yeah, factually what it is, and then why we do it.
Okay.
Price lock guarantee states the following: for any Kaseya product, and whatever that Kaseya product may be, in our agreements, we're contractually committing, not at renewal time, to not raise the price more than CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, plus anywhere from 0% to 5% above the Consumer Price Index. We averaged, I believe, last year about 2% above the Consumer Price Index. So that means that, I think one of your earlier questions, Robin, was around like a bait and switch kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We legally cannot do that. So we lock our price to an inflation. We lock our price increases to an inflation-based metric. Here's why we did it. Number one is from a MSP viability perspective. We want the MSPs to have predictability into what their costs will be. What happens a lot, and this happens a lot with private equity firms. Now, Kaseya is private equity owned. We have a couple private equity firms, myself and the employees are the owners of Kaseya. And it doesn't always happen, but when financial investors buy companies, what can happen at times is they will raise prices 50, 100%. And it's a strategy. I'm not saying it's a good or a bad strategy. It's a strategy. And the rationale behind it is if 30% of the customers leave, but the 70% that are staying are paying twice as much, that yields great revenue growth. That strategy, by the way, originated or became popular from Computer Associates back in the 90s and early 2000s, when Computer Associates would buy companies, and they would buy a company and they would just raise the maintenance price to astronomical numbers. So that's a play used in some playbooks. We've never done that. Kaseya doesn't do that. However, it's a scary thought. If I'm an MSP and I'm all in on Kaseya, I'm horrified that now that I'm all in, you're going to double my price next year, or in 3 years, or in 10 years, or whatever it may be. So we take our ability to do that and get rid of it. Now, there's a couple other things on the price lock guarantee that are, I think, very interesting. One of them is, so every Kaseya product, we offer a 1-year price, a 1-year subscription, and a 3-year subscription. Now, of course, we charge a little bit less for a 3-year subscription because companies that make a larger commitment, we give a better deal. I'm sure most MSPs do the same thing, similar things. Most businesses do. And the interesting part about our price lock guarantee, it only happens at the time of renewal. So what that means, if an MSP is paying $100 for something from Kaseya, and they're on a 3-year contract, in year 4 and only year 4, are they eligible for a price increase? And that price increase is the CPI plus up 1 to 5%. So let's say CPI is 2%, and we have CPI plus 2% as our price increase. They would pay $104 in year 4. It doesn't hit every single year.
Okay.
So we believe that this is a very, very beneficial piece for software companies, for MSPs leveraging our products. And also, a price lock guarantee means that you can buy additional licenses at the price that you signed up for as well. So you're locked into, as most MSPs businesses are growing 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12% a year. They're buying more licenses. They lock that price in for the duration of that contract.
Gotcha. Okay. And that answers the other, because you're talking about the 3-year contracts, that bubbles up. So you do have 1-year contract options, like you said. So I just wanted, that was another sort of
Yeah, and
concern
I
I
got to be
had.
honest on that one, Robin. The 1-year, 3-year contract, definitively 100% yes. But we haven't done a great job of that.
Mhm.
Two things that we did that were not good. Not intentionally bad. We're not trying to screw people over. We just made mistakes. One of them was an execution mistake. We didn't market it right. We believe as a company, we're a company, and we want to make our customers the most successful customers. So as a company, we keep saying a 3-year transaction, it's the best way of doing business. Your prices are so much lower in a 3-year deal. You lock that price in for a longer period of time. We're in a period of high inflation, whatever various government metrics say, we're in a period of high inflation. We all feel it. I could talk about my trip to the supermarket the other day. We all feel it. So we want to lock our customers' prices at the lowest possible price. MSP's labor prices are going up. Let's lock in their price for 3 years. And so we, as a company, we're like, this is the best thing to do. It's the best thing for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that maybe we got a little arrogant. Maybe we made too many assumptions. Instead of saying, Mr. or Mrs. MSP, we have a 1-year and a 3-year option. Choose. Here are the benefits of both. Very often it's just like, well, the 3-year deal is so much better. We just do that.
Mm-hmm.
So a perception got created that we don't do 1-year transactions.
Right.
That's just it's us, overstepping. So to answer your question very directly, yes, every single thing we sell is on a 1-year and a 3-year option.
Okay. Let me give you, I want to be mindful of your time. So I've got just a couple more, if you're okay,
Yeah.
just hang it up. Okay. So another concern was around the contract language. Someone posted a snippet of I don't know where they got it. I mean, they could have made it up for all I know, but so, I'll just caveat that, I saw it on Facebook, so it must be real, right? But I saw a snippet where the contract, and I don't have it in front of me, but it sounded something like if I'm an MSP with Kaseya 365, and I don't even know if it was the Kaseya 365 agreement or somewhere, it was saying that you could take my customer. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I do. For those who want to get a little bored in some legalese, I'll talk right now, but I'll try to summarize it in a commercial way.
Okay.
When we bought Datto, and we bought them almost 2 years ago. Isn't that crazy? Almost 2 years ago. When we bought Datto had in their EULA, right? Their contract, if you will. Like, you buy something, you click on something, and says, I agree to the terms. That's called an EULA. That's a contract. It was something that they put in, which actually was really well intentioned, and it was at the request of MSPs. I mean, Datto is a company that was very good at listening and adjusting. Hopefully, we've absorbed some of that, a lot of that into Kaseya, right? Being able to listen, trying to be a melting pot, take all the good things of everything. And basically, what it said was Datto's partners, a lot of Datto MSPs, had wanted Datto to include in their EULA language that states, if they being the MSP, were to go out of business, then the end customer is entitled to the data and the information from their boxes. And the reason why the MSPs asked for that is their customers wanted that protection from the MSP. And if the MSP goes out of business, they're not a viable entity anymore. So that means all of the data and stuff would then go to Datto, because Datto was the contract holder of the box and stuff. So the end customer, the architecture firm, says to Robin's MSP, Robin, if you go out of business, I need to make sure that I'm protected. So I want to be able to go back to the vendor where you're managing all my stuff and be able to get all of my information and run that way. And the MSPs also like to show that so they wouldn't get sued and that sort of thing. So we incorporated that language into all the Kaseya contracts.
But your intention is not to run an MSP and take their customers
No,
from
no, no. I mean, to be blunt, whoever's posting that, if it's well intentioned, I apologize for having any confusion there. If it's someone trolling us, it doesn't make any sense at all as to how we would take an architecture firm and manage them. It doesn't make any sense at all. We're not in the business of doing that. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. We're not a several billion-dollar company by doing that. But I understand the optics of it. And one of the things, so when this came up, I think this came up a couple of weeks ago, this thread hit. And our legal team, a woman named Seppi Tofi, she's our chief counsel, she's working with Ranjan Singh, our product folks, to look to make the language more friendly, or maybe even give the MSP the option of opting in or out to that. Remember, that particular phrase, or that like little snippet, it's actually for the benefit of the MSP. Because the MSP can then say to their customer, if I, the MSP, go out of business, all your data and stuff is safe. Because the vendor who's holding it has to give it, you're safe. But option out, giving options is always a good thing, and that's something that we're looking to address and take the feedback and maybe give some optionality. But that's the intention of it. And by no means our commercial model is not to steal customers. And our operational capability is such where we can't even do it.
Yeah. Well, it's similar. It makes me think similar to like what we have. We resell Keep, which is Infusionsoft Keep software. And our customers' data, we don't host it, Keep hosts it. So if we were to go out of business, and in fact, I do know, it makes me wonder, I'm going to go back and look at my contract with them now, because my intention is not to take their data. I don't touch their data. We don't want we want to your data is in Keep. And we have it where someone will say, well, I want to cancel, but I still want to have my data, or I want to have my software. And we just turn that license back over to Keep, because they don't want to hire our Sherpas or whatever, for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. The point is, it's their data. And I do know of somebody who was trying to replicate what we were doing, and they held the license. And if you cancel with them, they actually took your data. And it created a big stink. So I think this is a really interesting topic that should be talked about amongst MSPs, not just with Kaseya, but I think in general, in the clarifying the agreement with your customer of, if we were to fail out, I mean, you never want to think your business is going to go under, but stuff happens, people die. We just literally had a member who unfortunately had a massive heart attack. He passed away. And they're scrambling over there. Nobody knows where anything is, and the customers are kind of in the middle, and it's a mess. So I think it's an interesting topic. I don't know who brought it up on social. I mean, some people, everyone's just looking at this and going, does it make sense? But I think that you explained it, and I think it's a topic that should be a conversation with all MSPs and the relationships they have with their vendors, whether it's Kaseya or somebody else.
And that this topic is an interesting one, because as MSP's customers, what we've seen over the last several years is, again, the architecture firm, the dentist, lawyer, they're becoming a little more and more like IT and security knowledgeable, right? 5 years ago, they probably didn't know what ransomware was. Now they understand what ransomware is. Now, basic knowledge, and they're starting to ask some of these questions. What happens if? Also, a lot of particularly smaller MSPs, they're trying to maybe move upstream a little bit into acquiring more mature customers, where this is very common. That's the intention of where this comes from. It's to make that MSP, seem more safe, seem more ironclad. So, but it's again, it's things that we're always looking at it and always looking into ways of making it better, and we'll keep doing so. Okay,
so I got one more question, then I want to ask you about what's next, and then because I know your time is watching the clock. And this came actually from a member of mine. I thought it was a really good question. And it was a concern, not necessarily with Kaseya or Kaseya 365, but she said, with the lowering of prices and constant innovation of AI, so your tools are getting better, smarter, more capable, the costs are coming down. She was kind of thinking out loud of what should we do with the savings? Like what's the strategic move? Do we lower our prices to be more competitive and take that away from other MSPs? Do we pocket the money? Do we invest it into engineers and training to get better? So I'm just curious, like, I know you have a council of very large, successful MSPs, and I know you know a lot. Like, what advice, now that this is out there and the tool costs are going down, what should MSPs be doing today or using this, how they use it to make sure in 3 to 5 years they're still relevant and competitive?
It's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'll break it into a few different sub questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
First, here's the commercial. I think everyone should be on Kaseya 365. So you have the opportunity to make this decision. I'm being funny. But if your unit economics have changed, again, we believe we've fundamentally changed the unit economics of this industry. So if you're an MSP and all of a sudden your profit has just doubled, what do I do with that? Well, a couple of things you can do. One, you can make more profit. An easy answer is
vacation home.
Profit. You can hire more engineers. You can invest in marketing. So I think it depends on where you are with your MSP. What are your objectives? So if your objective of your MSP is to grow 6, 7, 8, 10% a year and have a lifestyle business, that's great. You've now just doubled your margin. That's great. If your objective is to be aggressive and grow, you can do a couple of things. A couple of things you couldn't do before. One of them, you can lower your price for a prospect to get that prospect because you're competing with an MSP who may not be powered by Kaseya. And if you can lower your price, you can deliver the same solution for a lower price and make the same profit you were making before. That's massive differentiation.
Or charge the same, like match their price, but just give them more, because they're not getting the security. You go point out, look at all the things you're not getting. I can match their price and give you these other 5, 6, 7 things.
Yeah, I had a conversation with a pretty large MSP, based in the Midwest, based out of Michigan. And what he's doing is he's putting MDR 24/7 SOC on every single one of his customers, even those that aren't paying for it. And he's showing them the results. And he's doing it for 90 days. And he's saying, hey, and if you want to keep this up, it's an extra, $23 a month. Once the customer sees all the stuff that's going on, they're like, oh my God, all these things are happening. It's insane. So there's a lot of ways of leveraging. You can do free trials of new capabilities, like I just mentioned before. Another thing to do is so one of the things that we're seeing happening in the industry, and I spend a fair amount of time down in Washington looking at the regulatory landscape. Washington's not a great place to be. Everyone's, politics and all that kind of crap, but I'm not down there for that. Down there more to see what's happening from either a regulatory or a policy perspective with like CISA and various members of Congress and congressional groups and even some think tanks that are looking at cybersecurity as the modern day mafia. I talk a lot in different forums about there was something called the mafia tax that hit America when the mafia was at its height, organized crime in like the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It was, I've read upwards of 4, 5, 6, 7% of our economy was being quote unquote taxed by efficiency loss because of organized crime. Cyber crime is having a similar impact because everything is digitized. Everything is now systems. Every industry is dealing with it. And I think how much it costs just to prevent it. It's huge. It's hitting our economy big time. So, our government's realizing this. So because of the nature of this type of criminal activity, it's falling upon what's happening now in the minds of various, regulators and legislators is it's got to be self-governing, self-protected. So how do we set policy How do we set standards that will reduce the overall risk and the overall economic impact of these cyber gangs? And that's a fancy way of saying there will be standards that must be complied with. And these new compliance measures, whether they come out in the form of a law, or they come out in the form of a recommended policy, or they come out from commercial sectors mandating certain best practices, these policies, believe me, they are coming in the next 3 to 24 months. And every single MSP that wants to be in business will need to be aware of them and able to make sure that their customers can demonstrate compliance with whatever relevant standard there is for them. And that as an MSP, they have that capability to prove that they themselves are complying with the standard. Things
Is
like
that FedRAMP, FTC, or
oh
is
yeah,
this new?
FedRAMP, CMMC, it's coming.
Okay.
And your vendors like Kaseya, we will be FedRAMP in process in the next several months. These are massive undertakings. This represents huge opportunity for the MSP space. You know, I'm not a big fan of government regulation. I don't know who is. You know, regulation is always tough. But the bottom line is, doesn't matter if we like it or hate it, it's coming. And it might be the single biggest opportunity for an MSP to be able to be successful. But what's going to happen is, in order to adjust for it, it's going to put more work and more effort on the already burdened MSP. And what we're doing with Kaseya 365, much of what we're seeing in the early stages of this, we're covering in K365. And we'll continue to do that as Kaseya 365 iterates. So what we're trying to make sure happens is an MSP powered by Kaseya. Not only do they make the profit margins they freaking deserve, because they're doing more value add than the accountant or the plumber or the plastic surgeon. Again, no disrespect to those professions, but what an MSP is doing is harder and it's more valuable to society. It's going to get even harder because the MSP is going to have to do things to make sure that their customers are complying with these standards. And that's going to squeeze margins even more. So what you'll see us doing is the same strategy of providing more automated integrated kit at a lower price so the MSPs can continue to do more with less, because the MSP is going to be they're getting caught between the hammer and the anvil, right?
Yeah.
That's what's happening. And it's our job to make sure that the Kaseya MSPs are the ones that are kicking ass and profiting and doing well with all this change that's coming. So that's kind of how we see it.
Yeah, pretty exciting. I mean, there was a point. I remember talking to you again, this back in 2015. I was really anxious with cloud. It was really starting to take hold, and the whole concept of Microsoft just selling, or Google selling you a laptop with all the software backup, everything included. You didn't need IT support. And I was like, I think this industry is going to go away. And you're like, whoever says that is an idiot. And I was like, I was happy to hear it, because I was starting to look around for another vertical to go, literally I was looking at financial services, because that would be a kind of a natural.
Thank God you didn't, Rob. Thank God.
Yeah, I know, right? But I'm dead serious. I remember that conversation, and it's more angst maybe for the MSPs, but there's also more, it makes you more relevant, more opportunity, et cetera. So I think this is a great time. So Fred, I've taken way too much of your time already. I appreciate you being here. Any other final last words you want to say to people?
I first off, thanks for the opportunity to do it. And this has been the best professional experience of my life working in this community. You always try to make things better, whether it's, your apartment building you live in, or your house you live in, or your family try to make it better. We're trying to make this community better. We probably do a lot of things wrong. Hopefully we do twice as many things right as we do wrong, and we can bring it on. But this, by changing the unit economics of the industry, I think that we give MSPs a fighting chance to be 100% better, whatever better may mean. We can't make an MSP better. MSPs are their own companies. But if we can give ammunition and tools for them to fight the really hard fight that they do every day, and put themselves in a position to double their profit or double their growth or make sure all their customers are safe and give them a head start on this massive compliance wave that's coming. We're just trying to do our part and hopefully make the community that we're lucky enough to be in better than, make it better than when we got here. And that's what we're shooting for, Rob.
Yeah, well, we'll have to do another interview on what's coming because I'd love to know more about the future. And maybe at our roadshow we'll invite you to come speak if you can make it at some of them and just talk about that, because I think that would be of great interest to a lot of people. What's coming down, because if you're in DC and you're having those conversations, I think it's really super important. So, all right, well, Fred, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you so much. Yeah, guys, go check out Kaseya 365. At least kick the tires, guys, at least give it a shot and take a look at what it's going to do for your margins. And I know that I've heard your team talk about doing a profit fuel it's like an exercise I think they go through to see how much it can save you. And I think about that money and what you could do with that money. Maybe it is you need a vacation and you just deserve a little bit of extra, cheddar in your bank account, but maybe you could spend it on marketing. See, I got to work my commercial in there too. So whatever. All right. Appreciate you, Fred. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Robin.